Alto Goldfield is a first-year student at Ortigia Academy of Magic. He has just failed the summoning exam. Despite having perfect scores in all other subjects, he cannot form a contract with a familiar, which means he will not be able to advance to the second year. His professor says this is not a difficult task. Some students have even formed contracts with rhinoceros beetles. In any case, he must form a contract with any familiar before the faculty meeting the following morning. Lilia Cutelfute is a friend of Alto, and she runs down the corridor eager to find out if her friend passed the test. Alto gives her the bad news, and Lilia is saddened to hear that her friend Alto worked hard not only to get into the academy but also to pass all the difficult subjects. However, the only thing he cannot do is summon a familiar, which puts all his hard work at risk. Still, he has until the next day, so he will try again. In the library, he thinks about what he could summon. The compatibility between the familiar and the master is essential, and Alto has already tried various types. Perhaps now he should try something really strange and unique. At that moment, a book begins to come out of the shelf above Alto's head and falls on him. He picks up the book and says it would be a great coincidence if it were a summoning book. Later, he concludes that it is indeed a summoning book. It is a very old book, and he has no idea what he might summon. The pages are quite worn, but he can still read the magic circle. He then draws the circle on the floor of the room and says the magic words of the summoning. The circle begins to glow, something that has never happened before. Alto then completes the ritual by giving a drop of his own blood. Black smoke fills the place, and to his surprise, a slender female body with many curves emerges from the smoke. Purple hair, red eyes, horns, and a pointed tail are what stand out the most, in addition to her bust. The woman states that Alto was the only one who managed to free her. Alto wonders what he summoned. She looks like a human, a naked human. The woman sees how innocent Alto seems to be and smiles, asking what he wants her to do, saying it can be anything. Alto is completely embarrassed. He has probably never seen anything so beautiful and seductive before. Stammering, he says he wants her as his familiar. A golden light fills the place, several beams of light surround the two of them, and the woman wonders how the young boy can have so much mana. A contract is formed, creating marks on both of them. On Alto, a mark on his right hand, and on the woman, a mark on her bust. The woman says that he is quite strong and quickly accepts her situation, saying a contract is a contract. That said, she will serve from her master's mana in return. Quickly, she approaches Alto and presses her lips to his, sucking a good part of his magical power. She introduces herself as Vermeil, a demon. Running her hand over her master's chest, she says she is willing to do anything he asks, to which Alto asks her to put on clothes immediately. She calls him a strange little creature, really preferring her with clothes? Unless he is an eccentric wolf in sheep's clothing, she thinks. All timid and very embarrassed, Alto asks if she can stop talking about it and put on some clothes. Unfortunately or fortunately, none of Alto's clothes fit her. He mentions that he has his sister's clothes in the bottom drawer. They should fit. Vermeil then picks out a short, sexy dress, asking her master if it is okay. He blushes even more. Somehow, she is sexier than before. Later, Alto explains about the Magic Academy and his problem with summoning familiars. Vermeil finds it amusing but says it makes sense. After all, Alto's mana is so great that most familiars would not dare approach him. His magic is so potent that it is like poison to most beings. However, Vermeil says she likes him powerful and potent. Demons are powerful illusory beings who have been feared by humanity in that world for ages, some of them capable of destroying entire nations. Alto asks why she accepted him. After all, she could break the contract if she wanted to, given her great power. Indeed, she could, but Vermeil had been trapped in that book for quite some time, and Alto was her liberator. So technically, she owes him a lot. Being his familiar is a small price for freedom. Alto is curious as to why she was sealed. Vermeil finds his curiosity interesting and says it was because she did many improper things. At this, Alto wonders if he can really have a demon as his familiar and asks Vermeil if she is an evil being. The woman is greatly amused by this comment, but she says that it is one way to put it. Later, Alto goes to his professor at the academy and, embarrassed, introduces his new familiar. The professor thinks Vermeil is just an ordinary human, and although he knows Alto is desperate, this could not be accepted. Vermeil gets angry and bangs on the table, showing the contract mark on her bust. The professor is impressed, not only because it is indeed a familiar mark but also because of the beautiful view. He is confused. Never in history has a person made another person their familiar. Vermeil asks who cares and tells him to go ahead and confirm that Alto has a familiar. Thus, Alto passes the exam and can advance to the second year. The professor asks if it is really okay for her to stay as a familiar since she would basically be Alto's servant. She does not mind. Right behind, Lilia is seething with jealousy, wondering who that woman is. During class, Vermeil is bold and always clings to her master, which makes Lilia break her own pen in anger. She stayed up all night worried about Alto. The professor calls Alto's attention, telling him to avoid such behavior in class. However, Vermeil says that many other students have their familiars on their laps, and also one of the school's doctrines is to live alongside one's familiar. The professor is left without words and asks Alto to pay attention to the class anyway. Vermeil gets excited and asks Alto to give her more of that thick and potent thing inside him. This is the last straw for Lilia, who stands up and shouts, asking what they are doing. For shouting in class, the professor sends her to the corridor. After the class ends, Lilia runs looking for her friend, wanting a good explanation for all this. Vermeil asks who that woman is, and Lilia says the same. At this point, Alto remembers the previous day, when Vermeil said she would disguise herself as a human because wizards utterly despise demons. Fortunately, ordinary wizards cannot see through her veil, so she just has to hide her tail and horns. Returning to the present, Alto answers his friend, saying that Vermeil is his acquaintance. She is filled with rage, takes off her tie, and throws it in Alto's face, challenging him to a duel. If he loses, he will leave his familiar in his room, using her only when necessary. In a duel before the academy, two people challenge each other, and the loser must do whatever the winner commands. Vermeil then says that if Alto wins, Lilia will have to obey one of his orders. She immediately blushes, imagining steamy things. The three go to an altar, where the fight is broadcast to the entire academy through magical screens. Lilia summons her familiar Sylphide, a high-level wind spirit. Vermeil is even impressed to see that she can summon a high-class spirit at her age. Lilia says that the combination of her powers with her familiars is incredibly powerful. Alto may be strong, but without a familiar, he is no match for that. The girl is furious with jealousy and launches her magic with all her might. Alto thinks about dodging, but it is already too late. Vermeil then steps in front of him, telling him to trust her a little more. She takes a direct hit, and Lilia already claims victory. But amid the smoke, a silhouette is still standing. Vermeil has not suffered a scratch. Now it is her turn to attack, concentrating a vast amount of power. She launches a deadly power at Lilia, making her moan erotically. Thus, the girl loses the duel and now has to obey an order from her opponent. Lilia soon becomes excited and a bit embarrassed, but Alto makes his request and asks that Lilia and Vermeil become friends, as duel agreements cannot be broken in any way. Lilia accepts, but only because she cannot refuse a request from Alto, and she extends her hand to Vermeil. The two shake hands, with Lilia calling her ma'am. Vermeil finds it funny, especially after Lilia's defeat. A tense atmosphere of rivalry forms between the two. Later at Alto's house, he asks his familiar not to cause any more problems. She retorts, saying it's not her fault and that the girl is in love with him. But Alto says that's impossible. Lilia is a childhood friend, and she's always angry with him for strange reasons. But she is a good friend. Vermeil then says she worked hard today and deserves a reward. She approaches Alto, asking for his mana through a kiss. After that, Alto asks why she needs to drain mana. Vermeil replies that she was sealed for centuries, which left her weak. If it weren't for Alto, she wouldn't even be able to maintain a human form. The boy feels grateful, thinking he's gaining a lot for a low price, but his familiar responds that having a demon as a familiar is totally unfeasible for normal mages. They would either explode from within or have their mana completely drained. In Alto's case, he has what it takes for the contract. She also says there are other ways to drain mana besides a kiss and asks if he wouldn't like to try, while she runs her hands over his body. Alto thinks the kiss is just fine. The next day, Alto and his hot demon return to class, with him asking her to try not to draw too much attention. Everyone devours her with their eyes, but a dragon-type familiar catches everyone's attention. Vermeil agrees not to overdo anything, so she flicks the dragon, sending it flying like Team Rocket. Later, an instructor congratulates everyone while Alto complains about his partner drawing too much attention with that little hit. But actually, it's something else that catches the other students' attention. Big melons. During the lesson, the professor explains the seals that lock demons away and how it's impossible for them to break free. But Lilia just wants Vermeil to get away from her crush. After class, Lilia and Vermeil fight over Alto again, but they are interrupted by a crybaby and his brown-haired brother, demanding an explanation for the dragon being sent flying earlier. But Vermeil and Alto had already forgotten about it. Vermeil starts acting like a victim while Alto sneaks up from behind and uses his crystal magic on them both. But the senior reveals his familiar, a very powerful red dinosaur. The senior thinks Vermeil is hot but wants to see her regret what she did, which Alto doesn't like at all. Vermeil then hugs him from behind and gives him some of the mana she had sucked before, giving Alto a boost to defeat the dinosaur with another advanced crystal magic. After the commotion, Vermeil thinks the school is really a pain, wondering if this will help Alto get what he wants. If he wants to be rich, she can do that easily. Alto doesn't want her to do anything illegal, but what he really wants is to become an incredible mage. The Academy's mages are ranked as bronze, silver, and gold. It's already very difficult to reach the bronze level, and Alto wants to be better than the gold level and elite level, a special level given to the most outstanding of the gold level. Vermeil then promises to make her master's dream come true while smothering him in her breasts. Then she takes off her dress, saying she needs more mana, so Alto better be prepared, because the night is going to be hot. The next day, Vermeil is radiant after the wonderful night she had. Marx Parston shows up, an old friend of Alto and Lilia, accompanied by Cheryl. Marx considers himself Alto's rival, but Vermeil thinks he's just an idiot. The professor sees them there and says that the Academy president wants to see them. Alto, Lilia, and Cheryl are called to compete for the position of student representative. To do this, one of them must complete a challenge to retrieve the fairy flower by 6 p.m. There is only one of these flowers at the moment, and after some time, Alto and Lilia find it, but it is being guarded by a Cerberus. Lilia then shows that she has an invisibility potion, and Alto wonders why she has that item saved. She wanted to spy on Alto while he got excited, but ends up getting tangled in her words. The Cerberus has a great sense of smell, but it has a cold today. Lilia then drinks the potion, but her clothes don't turn invisible. She had forgotten that and starts taking off her clothes. That's when she realizes she is literally stripping in front of Alto. Well, she's invisible, so it's okay, right? Even so, she's still very embarrassed. That's when Alto realizes he was almost letting her win the contest. He asks what new power Vermeil gave him the day before, but she only amplified the mana he had given her before. That Cerberus can be easily defeated, but before that, Vermeil wants to enjoy her master a little more. She then grabs him and throws him to the ground, thoroughly appreciating his body and showing off her big melons. Meanwhile, Lilia tries to get past the dog, but it seems one of the heads wasn't sick and catches her scent. Alto attacks at the crucial moment, telling Lilia to go on. Vermeil then apologizes before launching a powerful crushing blow, putting the dog to sleep. She's impressed to see that Alto could fight even after she had sucked him dry. After that, Lilia brings the flower to Alto, as she doesn't consider herself the winner. Her potion wears off at the last minute, and Alto sees everything she has to offer. Unfortunately, the flower flies away and lands in Cheryl's hands, who did absolutely nothing. Vermeil delights in an ice cream, as it didn't exist in her time, so she is impressed. Our dear demon is hundreds of years old, and Alto is curious to know more about his sugar mommy. But a bunch of dragons flying overhead catches their attention. They are all piloted by Dragon Knights, a club of people with dragon familiars. As they walk, Vermeil offers her ice cream, and Alto even gets embarrassed, despite having sucked her tongue many times before. After that, the five friends discuss the student council members who achieved the gold level at the Academy. The most famous of them is Chris, the captain of the Dragon Club, whom Marx finds completely incredible. This greatly catches Alto's attention, as he very much wants to become someone like them. But suddenly he is smothered by large airbags.
Nice.
Vermeil is sure that her master's wish is easy for him to achieve. While Lilia is dying of jealousy in the locker room, Vermeil curiously examines her master's piece. He scolds her as he had asked her to wait outside, but she couldn't change there. Lilia then appears, saying that Vermeil should have gone to the girls' locker room and not the boys', and that even she wanted to spy on Alto while he was dressing too. At that moment, the student council appears in the hallway, admired by everyone. All five are gold level. One of them becomes intrigued by Vermeil. While bathing, Alto thinks that the student council is truly incredible, and even Vermeil agrees with him. He is startled to see her as she came into the world, bathing with him completely unprepared. And oh my god, Vermeil is perplexed by how well-built Alto's sword is. Guys, isn't this going too far? They even end up touching each other, and Vermeil asserts that they should do it. After all, she gives him strength, so she asks Alto to use her as he wishes. Later, in another place, we see Chris, the captain of the Dragon Knights, facing the senior Rex, who was defeated by Alto before. She learns that Alto has a human woman as a familiar and quickly becomes interested in him. Chris massacres Rex, calling him weak and humiliating him as trash for losing to a freshman, and thus denies his request to join the Dragon Knights. Rex realizes that Lilia was right about the Dragon Knights. They are just a bunch of arrogant and wicked braggarts. Later, Rex is hospitalized, and Alto ends up finding out and visits him. Rex says that he ended up like this because of a certain bitch, but none of it is Alto's fault, so he doesn't need to worry. Alto learns from Rex's brother that the bitch who left him like this was the infamous Chris, so he challenges her to a duel. When they arrive, Chris talks a lot of nonsense and then summons her dragon familiar. Alto then summons Vermeil, and they kiss, with the golden mana that emanates from them catching Chris's attention. The duel begins. Alto uses his crystal magic, which is easily repelled by Chris, who uses fire magic. Vermeil defends and says that Chris shouldn't use her full power against a freshman, but Chris says that a dragon never uses all its power on a small prey. The two continue exchanging blows while Chris acts like an impulsive idiot, trying to humiliate Alto. Vermeil amplifies her master's mana, and they perform a double strike. There was no way Chris could defend against it, so she jumped straight onto her dragon, saying how superior dragons are because they can fly. Haha, right. Vermeil defends and endures several of Chris's fiery attacks, passing mana to Alto again, but this time they come up with a plan. Alto uses a vast amount of mana that even impresses Chris. Summoning a large crystal pillar, Chris scoffs, saying the same attack won't work twice, and destroys the pillar. However, Alto and Vermeil disappear from the arena and reappear behind her, using the crystal shards to reach her. Alto then corners Chris with a sharp crystal shard, winning the battle. After this battle, Alto is praised by a group of sycophantic girls, and Lilia knows very well that those sluts are worthless. Alto's professor congratulates him but warns him that he can't challenge just anyone without a good reason, and Alto knows this very well. As punishment, Chris has to do community service for the rest of her life, and Rex thinks this is great. He is already healed from his wounds and feels a bit sorry for Chris, so he helps her out a little, even though she was a bitch earlier, and she even blushes. Later, while sleeping, Vermeil takes the opportunity to give Alto a tongue kiss, startling him with something delicious entering his mouth. He complains that she can't do that while he's asleep and tells her to put on some clothes. Vermeil, on the other hand, teases him, asking if he doesn't like her kisses. An embarrassed Alto says that kisses should be for someone you love. And Vermeil thinks this is great because she is completely in love with Alto. Wow, what a lovely couple. The next day, Alto says that Vermeil doesn't know when to stop and that she should have said she wanted something else as well. While she is all radiant, when he remembers that Vermeil said she loved him, he wonders if that can really happen. A demon falling in love with a human. Alto's professor is intrigued by this question, as demons have been very influential in the history of magic. But there is no known true romance between them beyond the interest of incubi and succubi. In the end, a succubus can fall in love with a human, but because of their interest in his mana. This disheartens Alto a bit. Later at lunch, Vermeil notices how strange her master is behaving. He hasn't even touched his food. He goes straight to the point and asks if she is only there because of his mana. Vermeil then understands everything and hugs him. Then she kisses him. He complains that she is doing it again but realizes that she didn't touch his mana this time. So Vermeil repeats that she should only kiss someone she loves. She then complains that he is giving her a lot of trouble. After all, he can kiss her whenever he wants. The next day, the two are more radiant than ever. Alto meets his previous professor, Sensei Obsidian, and apologizes for the strange questions the other day. The professor hopes Alto has good luck in love, but always be careful because, whether succubi or not, all women have a little restless demon. Sometime later, one of Obsidian's students is called by him, and this student is hopelessly in love with him. They hug, but the professor seems to have other plans when he shows a strange substance. After that, the student appears frozen in one of the academy's rooms. The rumor spreads among the students and reaches the ears of the council. Shinuji and his colleague Jessica discuss it, and this is already the fourth case of a frozen student. A thick ice wall covered the door where the victim was, and coincidentally, this same student uses ice magic. Despite this type of magic is inefficient in women. Later, Alto measures the height of his sugar mommy for a surprise report on students' familiars. He is perplexed to describe a demon, but Vermeil seems quite interested in seeing Alto analyzing her body. As expected, Vermeil soon starts to undress so that Alto can better analyze certain parts. He is, of course, very embarrassed, but Vermeil is active and tells him to hold her melons to feel their full size. While Vermeil is having fun, Lilia spies on her crush's house with Cheryl. She gets furious with the situation and quickly devises a plan to save Alto. Curiously, she has a copy of the key to Alto's room door and also another invisibility potion. She takes off her clothes and tells Cheryl to wait. Alto measures Vermeil's melons while she asks him to squeeze them well. He needs to describe her as human since demons are poorly regarded by everyone at the academy. Lilia infiltrates the boys' dormitory and is about to discover that Vermeil is actually a demon. But when she finally gets to Alto's room, he asks Vermeil to remove her horns so he can measure her head normally. Lilia spies on them from in front of the bookshelf, and at that moment, Alto needs one of the books from there. He almost touches and kisses Lilia, and she is completely perplexed and embarrassed. It was the wrong book, so when he goes to find the right one, it's right at the height of Lilia's melons, and he is about to touch her company. Alto finds the book, but it seems his finger also found something else on Lilia's body, as she gets quite excited. After this confusion, Vermeil says that Alto is one step closer to his goal. After all, he defeated Chris, who is gold level. However, he felt that Chris was holding back in the duel and was caught by surprise in the end. If she had gone all out, Alto would certainly lose. In the report, Alto says that Vermeil likes sweets, but before they go shopping, she adds Alto's name in the same section. Cute. Elsewhere, Chris is violently defeated along with her dragon. We see Rex with a new bizarre familiar, completely consumed by fury.